How important are George W. Bush's religious beliefs as they relate to U.S. foreign policy?
The fact is that every American president since Jimmy Carter, who I think was authentic, everyone since then has been compelled, or maybe some of them do it by choice, but it's a requirement that you be kind of something like a born-again Christian. If you're not, you don't compete in this system. So Bill Clinton was singing psalms in church every Sunday morning enthusiastically. What he was thinking about, you can figure out. My guess is he's about as religious as I am, but that's a prerequisite for appearing on the political stage. For some people, it's probably authentic. For others, it's probably something they're crafted to do, and it doesn't make any difference one way or another. What they are, in fact, I don't even care what their personalities are. That's between them and their wives and children. What I'm interested in is what they do. And as far as I know, there's no correlation between what they do and any religious beliefs that they either have or are taught to profess.
Last question. Has the religion of anti-communism been displaced by anti-terrorism? And is this morphing into anti-Islam as the new religion?
Well, the last is certainly what Osama bin Laden hopes. I mean, whatever's going on in his contorted mind, one thing is clear. He would love to have a war of civilizations. He would love to incite a war between the West and Islam. In fact, that's one of the main goals. People in planning positions in the United States, if they have any intelligence, certainly don't want that. And there's no historical reason to assume that it's true. The U.S. Is quite ecumenical in its foreign relations. So, for example, Indonesia was the largest Islamic state in the world, and the United States was very supportive of Indonesia, as was Canada, as long as it was being run by someone who's indistinguishable from Saddam Hussein, who came into power with killing maybe 1 million people and compiled one of the worst records of terrorism and atrocities in the world. And all that time, Canada and the United States were quite happy with him, even though it was an Islamic state. On the other hand, say in the 1980s, this relates to the war on terror. Remember, the people who are now in Washington, most of them, also were in leadership positions in the Reagan administration, which came into office in 1981, declaring that a war on terror would be the centerpiece of U.S. foreign policy, and under that framework carried out massive terrorist atrocities around the world, particularly in Central America, where one of their targets was the Catholic Church. Well, is there a war between the United States and the Catholic Church? There was in Central America. And in fact, it's more than symbolic that the horrible decade was opened with the assassination of an archbishop who had become a voice for the voiceless, and ended with the brutal murder of 6 leading Jesuit intellectuals by elite forces armed and trained by the United States. And in fact, though people don't like to talk about it, the U.S. Army understands that. So if you go to the School of the Americas, the famous school where they train Latin American officers, one of their talking points, as they call it, that tell people how wonderful they are, is, quoting it, that the U.S. Army helped defeat liberation theology. And that's true. There was a war between the U.S. military and the Latin American Catholic Church, which had adopted a preferential option for the poor and was working to help poor people, so they had to be slaughtered. We wouldn't conclude that there's a war between the United States and the Catholic Church. It's just that if the Catholic Church was working to organize and help poor peasants, yes, it becomes an enemy, just as if they called themselves communists or if they called themselves anything else. As for the current war on terror, we should bear in mind that it is a redeclared war, redeclared in the same rhetoric as 20 years earlier by very much the same people. We have a record of what they did during the first phase of the war on terror. It's very recent, actually continues through the 1990s, and it's just elementary sanity to look at that record and those people and their declarations and make some judgments about the redeclared war.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chomsky.
Thanks.
Noam Chomsky recently celebrated his 74th birthday. Happy belated birthday.